Yeah, man.
That's hot shit right there, man.
So what we gonna do?
We want you to be an activist. And don't take our word for it. Look that shit up. Pulley. Yep. And yep.
You and respects you for your courage and integrity. When you cannot be intimidated or bought off, then you are targeted for destruction. Heroic dissidents are demonized, marginalized, physically and psychologically destroyed, or assassinated by the American ruling class. Before the persecution of Julian Assange, before the FBI assassination of Fred Hampton and Malcolm X, before the murder of Martin Luther King, there was the relentless campaign to silence the activist, actor, and singer Paul Robeson. Robeson was a socialist and a militant who stood with the crucified of the earth. He was fearless, confronting then-President Harry S. Truman in a face-to-face meeting in the White House and berating him for failing to halt the reign of terror and lynching that afflicted blacks. He famously filed a petition with the United Nations charging the U.S. government with genocide against African Americans. Robeson, who had a law degree from Columbia University, was multilingual. He had a global appeal that has perhaps never been matched by another Black American, even by figures such as Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X. W.E.B. Du Bois called him, without doubt, the best-known American on earth. He was a stalwart member of the radical left, an active defender of trade union movements. But he was to become, in the words of Pete Seeger, the folk singer, who was also persecuted in the United States, the most blacklisted performer in America. By the end, stripped of his passport, subject to relentless character assassination, denied the ability to make a living, he would end his days in 1976, a virtual recluse in his sister's home in Philadelphia. His life illustrates the lengths to which the American empire will go to destroy and silence its most powerful critics. Linking the persecution of Paul Robeson directly to the persecution of Julian Assange, held today in a high-security prison in London, where his mental and physical health, like Robeson's at the end of his life, is in serious decline. Joining me to discuss the life of Paul Robeson is his biographer, Gerald Horne, the Moores Professor of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. So in your book, you write that Robeson pioneered the struggle against Jim Crow throughout the 30s and 40s. It was only with Robeson's fall that King and Malcolm could emerge as they did. The undermining of Robeson created a vacuum that these two leaders filled. I wondered if you could talk about his battle against racial segregation, racial terror, and this legacy that you highlight.
Well, the great Paul L. Robeson was born in central New Jersey in 1898, passes away.
Paul L. Robeson. I swear. And, it's funny because I studied stuff kind of related to this. And I swear I don't remember seeing this guy's name. Like, I don't remember reading about this guy or anything. So, and that's strange to me. And, but this is like news to me. That's why this caught my eye. Paul Robeson.
In Philadelphia in 1976. In between, he is an All-American football player at his alma mater, Rutgers University, New Brunswick, New Jersey. He's also a stalwart on the basketball court and on the baseball diamond. As you suggested, from there, he moves on to Columbia University and seemingly is en route to a comfortable life, or as comfortable as a, quote, Negro, unquote, could be under the savage ravages of Jim Crow. But his life is diverted. His life is diverted in part because of the fact that he was friendly with another Black lawyer, speaking of William Patterson, who eventually becomes a leading Black member of the U.S. Communist Party. And also his life is diverted by his spouse, Eslanda Robeson, who encourages him to express his artistic and cultural talent as a singer, as an actor, and he's finding it difficult. This is in the early 1920s, or in the post-World War I era, post-1918, to pursue that kind of career in New York City, where all three, Patterson and Robeson and his spouse, were living. And so he decides to go into exile, like so many Black Americans before or since. For example, the great James Baldwin, for example, spent a good deal of his most fertile years as an artist in France and in Turkey, for example. Robeson decided to choose exile in London, where he found things a bit more comfortable than he did in New York City. And he quickly becomes a star of stage and screen. On stage as a singer and as an actor, his Othello is still considered to be the definitive performance of that Shakespearean tragedy. And as well, because of the influence of Patterson, he is encouraged and decides to move even further to the left than he had been to that point. What I mean is,
let me go to the wiki that Doc sent me on Paul Robeson. Okay. This is the wiki page for Paul Robeson. Paul Leroy Robeson, April 9th, 1898, January 23rd, 1976. Was an American bass baritone concert artist, stage and film actor, athlete, and activist who became famous both for his cultural accomplishments and for his political stances. In 1915, wow, this dude was born in 1898. I'll still get my brain around that, and he was alive to 1976. In 1915, Robeson won an academic scholarship to Rutgers College. While at Rutgers, he was twice named a consensus All-American in football and was the class valedictorian. He received his LL.B. from Columbia Law School while playing in the National Football League. After graduation, he became a figure in the Harlem Renaissance with performances in The Emperor Jones and All God's Children Got Wings. Robeson performed in Britain in a touring melodrama, Voodoo, in 1922, and in Emperor Jones in 1925. In 1928, he scored a major success in the London premiere of Showboat. Living in London for several years with his wife Eslanda, Robeson continued to establish himself as a concert artist and starred in London production of Othello, the first of 3 productions of the play over the course of his career. He also gained attention in Sanders of the River, 1935, and in the film production of Showboat, 1936. Robeson's political activities began with his involvement with unemployed workers and anti-imperialist students in Britain, and he continued with his support for the Republican cause during the Spanish Civil War and his involvement in the Council on African Affairs. After returning to the United States in 1939, Robeson supported the American and Allied war efforts during World War II. However, his history of supporting civil rights causes and Soviet policies brought scrutiny from the FBI. After the war ended, the CAA was placed on the Attorney General's list of subversive organizations. Robeson was investigated during the McCarthy era. Due to his decision not to recant his public advocacy, he was denied a passport by the U.S. State Department. His income consequently plummeted. He moved to Harlem and published a periodical called Freedom, which was critical of the United States policies from 1950 to 1955. Robeson's right to travel was eventually restored as a result of 1958 United States Supreme Court decision Kent versus Dulles. So what did it say? They said, okay, let me go back. His history supporting civil rights. Hold on. Got the FBI. Scrutiny from the FBI. Attorney General's list of subversive organizations. Robeson was investigated during the McCarthy era. Due to his decision not to recant his public advocacy, he was denied a passport. And without that, his income. Oh. Okay. Yeah, submit or we take your income. Between 1925 and 1961, Robeson recorded and released some 276 songs. The first of these were the spirituals Steal Away, backed with Were You There in 1925. Robeson's recorded repertoire spanned many styles, including Americana, popular standards, classical music, European folk songs, political songs, poetry, and spoken excerpts from plays. The more you know. I want to see, do they talk about his political stuff? Theatrical successes. Let's see how far we got to scroll to get to Showboat, Othello, Ideological Awakening. Is this going to be it? I'm going to skip through it. It says his friends in the anti-imperialist movement and his association with British socialists led him to visit the Soviet Union. Robeson Essie and Mary Seton traveled to the Soviet Union on an invitation from Sergei Eisenstein in December 1934. A stopover in Berlin enlightened Robeson to the racism in Nazi Germany. And on his arrival in Moscow in the Soviet Union, Robeson said, "Here I am not a Negro, but a human being for the first time in my life. I walk in full human dignity." Wow, that's interesting. That's all they said. Hold on. Let me just read this. It says he undertook the role of Basambo in the movie Sanders of the River, which he felt would render a realistic view of colonial African culture. Sanders of the River made Robeson an international movie star, but the stereotypical portrayal of colonial African was seen as embarrassing to his stature as an artist and damaging to his reputation. The commissioner of Nigeria to London protested the film as slanderous to his country, and Robeson thereafter became more politically conscious of his roles. He appeared in the play Stevedore at the Embassy Theatre in London in May 1935, which was favorably reviewed in the Crisis by Nancy Kennard. In early 1936, he decided to send his son to school in Soviet Union to shield him from racist attitudes. Let me say that again. In early 1936, he decided to send his son to school in the Soviet Union to shield him from racist attitudes. 1936, he's a black guy, and he's in the United States. He decides to send his son to the Soviet Union in 1936 to shield him from racist attitudes. Wait a minute. Didn't World War II happen, right? Wasn't there? Okay. Moving on. Then he played the role of Toussaint Louverture in the eponymous play by C.L.R. James at the Westminster Theatre and appeared in the film Song of Freedom and Showboat in 1936. My Song Goes Forth, King Solomon's Mines, My Big Fella. 1937 and 1938, he was named the American Motion Picture. I don't know. It seems like, okay, Spanish-American War and political activism. Let me get into that. Because I'm looking for because it seems like, I want to read some more about the political activism. Thanks for sending this page. Did you wanted to say something, Doc? I want to read some more because the political stuff is what I'm interested in with him. It says, Robeson believed that the struggle against fascism during the Spanish Civil War was a turning point in his life and transformed him into a political activist. Okay, now we're getting to it. In 1937, he used his concert performance to advocate the Republican cause and the war's refugees. He permanently modified his renditions of Old Man River, initially by singing the word darkies instead of niggers. Later, by changing some of the stereotypical dialect in the lyrics to standard English and replacing the fatalistic last verse. I gets weary and sick of tying. I'm tired of living and screwed of dying. With an uplifting verse of his own, but I keep laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. Transforming it from a tragic song of resignation with a hint of protest implied into a battle hymn of unwavering defiance. His business agent expressed concern about his political involvement, but Robeson overruled him and decided that contemporary events trumped commercialism. In Wales, he commemorated the Welsh people killed while fighting for the Republicans, where he recorded a message that became his epitaph. The artist must take sides. He must elect to fight for freedom or slavery. I have made my choice. I have no alternative. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm fucking chopping this shit up. I need to know more about the Welsh people fighting for the Republicans. I need to make a note on that. Let me make a note. Fuck. Because I really got to look that up. Maybe that's what we'll be talking about next week. It says, after an invitation from JBS Haldane, he traveled to Spain in 1938 because he believed in the International Brigade's cause. Visited the hospital of Benicassim, singing to the wounded soldiers. Robeson also visited the battlefront and provided a moral boost to the Republicans at the time when their victory was unlikely. Back in England, he hosted Jawaharlal Nehru to support Indian independence, where Nehru expounded on imperialism affiliation with fascism. Robeson reevaluated the direction of his career and decided to focus on the ordeals of common people. He appeared in a pro-labor play, Planting the Sun, in which he played an Irishman, his first white role. Really? What Max Jurgen and the International Committee on African Affairs, later known as the Council on African Affairs, Robeson became an advocate for African nationalism and political independence. Okay. Paul Robeson was living in Britain until shortly before the start of the Second World War in 1939. His name was included in the Sonderfundungslist GB as a target for arrest if Germany had occupied Britain. If Germany had occupied Britain, he would be under arrest. What does that mean? World War II, the Broadway Othello, political activism, and McCarthyism. 1939 to 1945, World War II, and the Broadway Othello. Robeson's last British film was The Prov Valley, 1940, set in a Welsh coal mining town. Shortly after the outbreak of World War II, Robeson and his family returned to the United States in 1940 to Enfield, Connecticut, and he became America's #1 entertainer with a radio broadcast of Ballad for Americans. Nevertheless, during a tour in 1940, the Beverly Wilshire Hotel was the only major Los Angeles hotel willing to accommodate him due to his race. Really? So they say that again. Nevertheless, during the tour of 1940, the Beverly Hills Wilshire Hotel was the only major Los Angeles hotel willing to accommodate him due to his race. This is in 1940. At an exorbitant rate and registered under an assumed name, and he therefore dedicated 2 hours of every afternoon to sitting in the lobby where he was widely recognized to ensure that the next time blacks come through, they have a place to stay. Los Angeles Hotel lifted their restrictions on black guests soon afterwards. Really? Robeson narrated the 1942 documentary Native Land, which was labeled by the FBI as communist propaganda. After an appearance in Tales of Manhattan, a production which he felt was very offensive to my people, he announced that he would no longer act in films because of the demeaning roles available to blacks. I've heard that before. It sounds like they still say that today. According to Democratic Socialist writer Barry Finger's critical appraisal of Robeson, while the Hitler-Stalin Pact was still in effect, Robeson counseled American blacks that they had no stock in the rivalry European powers. Once Russia was attacked, he urged blacks to support the war effort, now warning that an Allied defeat would make slaves of us all. Robeson participated in benefit concerts on behalf of the war effort, and at a concert at the Polo Grounds, he met two emissaries from the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, Solomon Mikolas and Itzik Pfeffer. Subsequently, Robeson reprised his role of Othello at the Schubert Theater in 1943 and became the first African American to play the role with a white supporting cast on Broadway. Wow. So everybody else was, oh shit. So he was the main star. And that's 1943. During the same period, he addressed a meeting with Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis and team owners in a failed attempt to convince them to admit black players to Major League Baseball. He toured North America with Othello until 1945, and subsequently his political efforts with the CAA to get colonial powers to discontinue their exploitation of Africa were short-circuited by the United Nations. Did he help with the Major League Baseball stuff? How come I don't know this guy if he did all this stuff? During this period, Robeson also developed a sympathy for Republic of China's side in the Second Sino-Japanese War. In 1940, the Chinese progressive activist Liu Liangamo taught Robeson the patriotic song Chi La, Arise, known as the March of the Volunteers. Robeson premiered the song at a concert in New York City, Louis Home Stadium, and recorded it in both English and Chinese for Keynote Records in early 1941. Robeson gave further performances at benefit concerts for the China Aid Council and United China Relief in Washington's U-Line Arena in April 24, 1941. The Washington Committee for Aid China's booking of Constitution Hall had been blocked by the Daughters of American Revolution, owing to Robeson's race. Okay. The indignation was so great that Eleanor Roosevelt and Hu Xin, the Chinese ambassador, became sponsors. However, when the organization offered tickets to generous terms to the National Negro Congress to help fill the larger venue, both sponsors withdrew, objecting to the NC communist ties. Was it because he was black, or was it because he was a communist? The song became newly founded People's Republic of China's national anthem after 1949. Really? That's fucking crazy. The song became newly founded People's Republic of China's national anthem after 1949. Its Chinese lyricist Tian Han died in Beijing prison in 1968, but Robeson continued to send royalties to his family. Wow. So why did he die broke if he fucking owned the whole China's national anthem, bro? Who is this guy? Oh, shit. I just want to read this last little part. Am I losing y'all? Comments. He's one of the guys I've mentioned before as an early activist, but I think only Pat knew the name, but not much about him. Yeah, I swear, I'm learning a lot today. It says, I learned about him because I was in theater in high school, not in history class or during Black History Month. See, I wasn't in theater, so that's probably why I missed it. Let me read this last part right here. It says, this is not the end of the Wikipedia. This is just the last part I'm going to read. It says, in 1956 to 1957, End of Mccarthyism. In 1956, Robeson was called before HUAC after he refused to sign an affidavit affirming that he was not a communist. In his testimony, he invoked the Fifth Amendment and refused to reveal his political affiliation. When asked why he had not remained in the Soviet Union because of his affinity with his political ideology, he replied, "Because my father was a slave and my people died to build the United States, and I'm going to stay here and have a part of it, just like you, and no fascist-minded people will drive me from it." At that hearing, Robeson stated, "Whether I am not a communist is irrelevant. Whether I am or not a communist is irrelevant. The question is whether American citizens, regardless of their political beliefs or sympathies, may enjoy the constitutional rights." Due to the reaction to the promulgation of Robson's political reviews, his recordings and films were removed from public distribution, and he was universally condemned in the U.S. press. During the height of the Cold War, it became increasingly difficult in the United States to hear Robeson sing on commercial radio, buy his music, or see his films. That's why I haven't heard of him. In 1956, in the United Kingdom, Topic Records, at the time part of the Workers' Music Association, released a single of Robeson singing "Joe Hill," written by Alfred Hayes and Earl Robson, backed with John Brown's body. Joe Hill was a labor activist in the early 20th century, and Joe Hill, sung by Robeson, is the third favorite choice of British Labour Party politicians on the BBC radio program Desert Island Discs. In 1956, after public pressure brought a one-time exemption to the travel ban, Robeson performed 2 concerts in Canada in February, one in Toronto and the other in Union Convention in Sudbury, Ontario. Still generally unable to perform abroad in person, on May 26, 1957, Robeson sang for a London audience at St. Pancras Town Hall, where the 1,000 available concert tickets sold out within an hour via the recently completed transaction telephone cable, TAT1. In October that year, using the same technology, Robeson sang to an audience of 5,000 at Porthcow's Grand Pavilion in Wales. Nikita Khrushchev's denunciation of Stalinism at the 1956 Party Congress silenced Robeson on Stalin, although Robeson continued to praise the Soviet Union. The year Robeson, along with close friend W.B. Du Bois, compared the anti-Soviet uprising in Hungary to the same sort of people who overthrew the Spanish Republic government and support the Soviet invasion and suppression of the revolt. Robeson's passport was finally restored in 1958 as a result of the U.S. Supreme Court's 5-4 decision in Kent versus Dulles, where the majority ruled that the denial of the passport without due process amounted to a violation of constitutionality protected liberty under the Fifth Amendment. Then they should have gave him his fucking money or something. Like, they robbed him all that time. Like, if they just going to give it back to him and say, "Oh, they violated his constitutional right," somebody owe him some fucking money. I wonder if that's what happened. Did they leave that out? Guess I don't have to play the video now because that covered everything. The main reason I remember him is he died on January 23rd, my birthday. Wow. And he's a nobody in my mind, and everybody should know about him. So I'm glad. Hopefully people watch this show, because then I just documented that shit. No, I know y'all dudes not finna look up the damn Wikipedia on that guy. So you can just watch this video. It's way easier. I don't know. Chris Hedges, I think he asked him some good questions at the end, because we just covered everything. Let me see. After I play this little clip, Doc, tell me what you want to cover, because I've covered everything for this week already. Tomorrow is just going to be me goofing off.
Specific at that particular historical moment.
I want to talk about the his physical, as you mentioned, and psychological health deteriorates under this constant campaign against him. And in 1961, his son finds him in the bathroom of a Moscow hotel attempting to slit his wrists. And until the death of his son, he argued that his father was a victim of the CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb's MK Ultra program, which secretly administered synthetic hallucinogenics to dissidents, leaving many to have mental breakdowns or even commit suicide. And of course, one of the tactics was that after that hallucinogenic trauma, which is not explained to them, they don't know why they have it, they funnel them into electroshock therapy, which happened to Robeson, and they never really recover. And his son always argued that this was orchestrated by the CIA, and I wondered if you could address that.
Well, interestingly enough, his son, Paul Robeson Jr., writes a 2-volume biography of his father, which is actually quite interesting, and he deals with that point. Likewise, at New York University, at the Tamament Library, at the NYU, under Paul Robeson Jr.'s name, you can find detail and findings that help to substantiate the point that Paul Robeson Jr. makes. Likewise, as history proceeds, new documents arise, which is one of the reasons why many historians speak to history as argument without end, because as time passes, new documents arise. As you know, there's a 30-year rule with regard to the United States government releasing documents. And so now we can expect documents as recent as, 1992 to be coming forth. And so you see in this new book, A White Malice, which just came out recently, a very thick tone. The author takes advantage of some of these records to talk about Sidney Gottlieb and actually to talk about the CIA malfeasance on the African continent with the same kind of dirty tricks that were directed against Paul Robeson, also directed against African leaders as well, which helps to give sustenance and credibility to the charges that Paul Robeson Jr. makes. And interestingly enough, the author of the book, White Malice, who brings out this new evidence that I was just alluding to, also suggests that recent regulations and legislation with regard to files on the Kennedy assassination, which, as you know, takes place in 1963, well before the 30-year rule. Now we're talking about a 60-year rule, that documents are still emerging that are shedding light on Africa, shedding light on the U.S. Red Scare. Interestingly enough, the current U.S. president, for various reasons, has put a hold on coming releases of documents. I take it that hold will be lifted soon. And so we can expect to receive more documentation that no doubt will help to substantiate the charge that not only was Paul Robeson likely subjected to dirty tricks of the most malevolent variety, but many of his comrades. There are a lot of unexplained deaths in this country. As the book White Malice points out, there's this really striking coincidence of so many people committing suicide by jumping out of skyscrapers, for example. One has a very curious trend. And so once again, the lesson is that historians need to keep researching, journalists need to keep researching, journalists and historians need to keep writing.
Well, there was a whole unit set up to terrorize Black artists like Billie Holiday and destroy their lives. And Billie Holiday is another example, perhaps, of that.
Well, certainly. And in fact, there was a recent movie that did not do very well at the box office, perhaps fortunately, that tries to depict the kind of dirty tricks that Billie Holiday was subjected to. But alas, I think that the salacious aspects tend to overcome the creativity of the screenplay writer and the director.
Great. We're going to stop there. That was Professor Gerald Horn on the great Paul Robeson. I want to thank the Real News Network and its production team, Cameron.
Yep. That MK Ultra stuff was interesting. Then they breezed right over that part. Damn. So maybe it wasn't that they had revolted his passport. It's they had messed him up mentally so he couldn't. Why did he die broke? It seems like it's like they're saying he died broke. After doing all that stuff? Like, wow. Government could just take it all away, huh? That's scary to me. So you better submit. It says U.S. pours billions into Ukraine proxy war. U.S. pours billions into Ukraine proxy war while keeping public in the dark. That was the gray zone. We already know that. I wonder, do I have a am I sharing this with y'all? I wonder if I have the it was something I saw. What was it? Did I play this? I think I played this. I'm gonna get in trouble. Fuck it.
Gates versus Musk is the heavyweight fight of the century. Won't be a very good actual fight, but money-wise. Hello there, you 5.6 million awakening wonders. Together we voyage toward philosophy of life. I'm talking about. Hey, I see Bill Gates don't like Elon Musk. Why would that be? Are you a subscriber yet? If you're not a subscriber yet, subscribe right now. Give this video a thumbs up, only if you like it. I'll put on just empty, hollow flattery. And turn on the notification. Comments below saying, would you like to join I'm one of the world's richest men and get involved in some kind of spat. Let's see what it is that Bill Gates don't like about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who on this channel we appreciate as a champion of free speech, a person that seems to be influencing public debate in all sorts of interesting ways, and a person that we're very inquisitive about getting to know better. But let's see what Bill Gates says.
Bill Gates making some new comments about Elon Musk's $44 billion deal to take Twitter private. He spoke yesterday at the Wall Street Journal's CEO Summit.
The old Wall Street Journal CEO Summit, a place for average Joes. I'm just going to the CEO Summit just to exchange some ideas with the fellow CEOs. Let's put aside all these ideas about powerful individuals coming together to determine the future for average citizens. There's something for everyone, whether you're a CEO on Wall Street or
Gates was quizzed about his views on Elon Musk, in large part because of some of those tweets we saw just 2 weeks ago now, where it appeared that Elon Musk had screenshotted his text messages with Bill Gates.
Elon Musk's a gangster, isn't he? He's always doing some weird thing on Twitter. It's interesting.
Where Bill Gates effectively said that he was short Tesla, and Elon Musk turned around and said, well, if you're short Tesla, I can't really talk to you about philanthropy or anything else because I don't believe that you could possibly actually be interested in climate change.
It's interesting that there is this new appetite for outspoken public figures. Trump, Musk, and I suppose the antithesis to these plain-speaking public figures is someone like Bill Gates, who's on your TV talking about climate change or pandemics or whatever, but in private text messages saying like, "Oh, short Tesla stock." And I suppose if you were interested in climate change and you believe that electric cars is part of the solution, and I feel that Bill Gates probably does believe that you wouldn't necessarily short Tesla stock. Look, my views are outside of this little crucible of affairs, to tell you the truth. But I suppose why Elon Musk is becoming increasingly popular and influential is because, in a sense, like Trump, he's become someone that people recognize is speaking plainly.
I do think that people who own platforms have a role there, and eventually the platforms tried to play that role. It was kind of too late, and when you don't have the trusted leaders, speaking out about vaccines, it's pretty hard for the platform to work against that. So I think we have a leadership problem and we have a platform problem.
When Bill Gates says that there's a leadership problem and a platform problem, I think what he means is I don't have total control over all media messaging yet, but I will endeavour to achieve that through sponsoring journalism school, by controlling the WHO, by creating various pharmacological outlets, by buying up farmland. I think it's kind of a bit rich, and I use that phrase deliberately, for Bill Gates to criticise Elon Musk on oligarchy.
So do you have any advice for Elon Musk as he buys Twitter?
He actually could make it worse. What's his goal, where he talks about the openness? How does he feel about something that says vaccines kill people, or, that Bill Gates is tracking people?
What are those two particular examples?
Is that one of the things he thinks should be spread? So are his goals for what it ends up being, does it match this idea of less extreme falsehood spreading so quickly, weird conspiracy theories?
This is why you need a spiritual dimension to your life. Otherwise, you just get really powerful people just trying to propagate their own ideas. Freedom of speech is a spiritual principle in a way, because it suggests that you don't know what's best and you're going to have to tolerate hearing things that you don't agree with. If you think you do know best and you want to control the conversation, that is not a spiritual principle. That's a power principle. That's if you achieve total domination, you can control outcomes. That's not something we can build a reliable future on for everyone, unless you happen to trust or agree with the person that's in power. There are already laws around terror. There are already laws around language that is about inciting and violence. These laws already exist. You don't need additional regulation and censorship. And usually this additional regulation and censorship is used to prohibit freedom of more people than it proposes to help.
Does he share that goal or not? I thought that just human judgment would work. And so far, at least under the stress of the pandemic, that hasn't stopped the crazy stuff from getting out.
There are a few things I dislike about that announcement. One is the problematization of human nature. Oh, human beings, they can't determine truth from falsehood, especially when they're under the stress of a pandemic. And two, the fact that there is the constant foreclosure and censorship of information doesn't make conspiracy theories less appealing. It makes them more appealing. When you start shutting down opposition, it doesn't make you think, oh, God, thank God we got rid of that opposition so I can just believe in the truth in an uninterrupted way, like a symphony of truth, and I'm tapping my foot to it in a deck chair. It makes you think they're frightened. They're frightened of the alternative view because there is some validity to it. I'll tell you two stories that fall outside of the framework of people just can't cope with too many stories because of the pressure of the pandemic. Hunter Biden laptop, that was repressed and controlled. The people that spoke about it were called conspiracy theorists. And the Wuhan lab leak theory, which isn't absolutely, for the purposes of responsibility, because I like to tell you the truth, it's not proven to be true yet, but there is substantial evidence that it could be true. It's at least as likely to be true as the Wuhan wet market theory. So that's not, oh no, the stress, the pressure of hearing that there's an Institute of Virology in Wuhan. Oh, the pressure and stress of hearing that Joe Biden's got some potentially illegitimate alleged business interests that don't line up too nicely with his position as president. Oh, I can't cope with the pressure. No, there are legitimate ideas that are being closed down. Therefore, freedom of speech, good thing. It makes me feel that what these powerful elites and groups are interested in are total control of the narrative, because unless they have total control of the narrative, they'll hear information that will prevent people from being compliant.
It's a much simpler explanation to say that, this person started the pandemic than that there's this weird thing in biology.
Gates said it's unclear how Musk will change Twitter if he takes ownership, while also raising concerns about the spread of misinformation on social media platforms. Misinformation is not an objective thing like a meteorite. It is a subjective thing. Whose misinformation? Who benefits from truth? Truth is continually changing. On my podcast, Under the Skin, we had Professor Brian Cox, and he said that responsible science should be conducted with humility, accepting opposing views so that truth can can be reached through consensus and synthesis of opposing ideas. It's a good podcast. You should listen to it. Gates, who has been replaced by Musk as the world's richest person in recent years, went on to question what Musk's goal is with Twitter and whether his drive to promote free speech is sensible. How does he feel about something on Twitter that says vaccines kill people, or that Bill Gates is tracking people? Gates asked. Whether Bill Gates is tracking people or not is a matter for conjecture, but what we know for a fact is that the CDC are tracking people. We did a story on that last week. The data is available. Meanwhile, Gates has said he plans to set up a 3,000-person social media unit to help propagate accurate vaccine information in the future. This is a real gold rush for disinformation boards, isn't it? Every week a new one. Joe Biden's got a disinformation board. Bill Gates is setting up a disinformation board. Kanye West disinformation board. The last one was disinformation. When you don't have trusted leaders speaking out about vaccines, it's pretty hard for the platforms to work against that, he admitted. So I think we have a leadership problem and we have a platform problem. Yes, I think we have both of those problems, but perhaps not in the way that Bill Gates sees it. Because obviously what I believe in is freedom of speech, our ability to disagree with one another, our ability to have adult conversations with one another and disagree with one another. Do you believe that there's been free and open discourse around the subject of vaccines? Do you believe that pharmaceutical companies are subject to enough rigor and analysis? And do they share enough data, or do they occasionally say they'll boot things off 70 years into the future? Why is that? Because the information is going to make us so happy we might fall over with glee. And when it comes to Bill Gates tracking people, well, he says that in a glib.
Anyways, so Doc, what you think about that as far as the Bill Gates versus and it seems like Russell Brand chose his side. He's on Bill Gates' team all the way. I mean, not Bill Gates, I'm sorry. Elon Musk's team all the way. He's against Bill Gates. What do you think about that? Like the dynamic of Elon Musk versus Bill Gates? I say, to me, I don't, like I was saying before, it's like Batman. So like one of them is Batman, the other one is Spider-Man, I guess. You know what I'm saying? And it's like vigilante, like, you know what I'm saying? And like, whatever they feel is best is what's best. But they're tearing through the city. And it's really authoritarian. So it's just like the same system that they set us up under. That's what I don't like. And I think that people don't really see that it's like, okay, aristocrat or elites or whatever running these things, the money held by a few, and, these people make all the decisions for the many. So, but it's still the same thing if you're doing it because Bill Gates, all he does is philanthropy, right? And his wife. That's all they do now, right? So it's like I say, Bill, it's Batman and Robin, or it's Batman and freaking, I don't know, Thanos. I don't know, but it's like, these people aren't, you could view them as a good guy, but I just don't see it because, like I say, Batman is really a bad guy. He says, RB is about freedom of speech. BG is about freedom within the narrative. Okay. That's basically the same argument Russell Brand was making in the video. I wonder, let's read some comments. Comments. Gotta love the comments. These are comments underneath Russell Brand's video. One says, remember Bill Gates said natural immunity is unfortunate. Dun, dun, dun. I didn't say that, you guys. I was reading the comment. Next comment, it says, when I listen to Gates speaking most of the time, there's almost literal bells going off in my head like BS. Next comment, it says, Gates had just given Musk the biggest recommendation possible. Bill Gates, I don't like what Elon is doing with Twitter. The whole world, he pissed off Bill Gates, so he's clearly doing something very good. Yep, maybe Bill Gates don't really understand how the internet works with trolling and all of that. They do the opposite. The internet, they do the opposite of whatever you tell them to do. You tell them, don't click on this video. don't like this video, don't watch this video. They're going to watch it. Like, you don't tell me what not to do. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to watch it. Yo, you don't tell me what not to do. That's the internet. It says, that's just a conspiracy fact. We love you, Russell. Excuse me. Another comment, it says, the only thing I find amazing at this point is that Gates is still given a respect at all. People still interview him. He's released a new book, etc. How this madness persists is beyond me. How he's not in prison yet speaks volumes to me about the state of corruption we're in. That wasn't my comment. That was the comment I'm reading underneath the video, people. More comments. It says, I never envisioned a world where Russell Brand was the light of reason, but here we are, and he is exceptional at it. I'd have to condone that freaking comment. It says, Gates sure doesn't make me feel like he wants the better for humanity. Another comment, it says, if he's upsetting Bill Gates, he's doing something right. Dang, okay, somebody already said that. We need more of this, just like how they pit us against each other, so we don't unite against their oligarchy. We should be pitting the billionaires against each other. That's an interesting take. Gates certainly does not want Musk to have a platform which allows people to have their own opinions and come to their own conclusions when they are given the truth, the facts. One of the qualities about Musk that I like is his ability and willingness to talk unscripted to people without leaving the impression that he has a devious underlying agenda in which we are the product. I think one thing, though, about Musk that people, I don't think the perception that you guys have of Musk is who he really is. Like, this guy's a genius, and he really knows how to, he understands the media, he understands the internet, he understands image. So don't forget that. Let me read some more. It says, I don't think that disinformation is often called that because it sounds better than calling it concealing truth. And like I said about Batman, it's like, you put on the mask so they don't know who you are during the day. And at nighttime is, well, both times you have on a mask. But I mean, you just go around and act like a regular person during the day, right? And at night you put on the mask, you're Batman. So think about it in reverse and think about it as like Elon Musk is Batman during the day because he has on his mask. And you don't really know who he is. Takes off his mask only at home when he's in his bat cave. Let me read some more. It says, Bill, as a crazy person myself, I take offense to your usage of the term. Please, we crazy people would like to colloquially be referred to as people who don't believe your bullshit lies. Thanks, Bill. You're crazy. Crazy conspiracy theorist. Another comment, it says, since the whole COVID thing started, I've been following a very simple way of thinking. If Bill Gates says that we should act in a certain way, we should act in the exact opposite. Like I said, that's the internet. They're getting repetitive, so I'm gonna stop reading the comments. How y'all feel, man? Doc says, which is really the mask, Batman or Bruce Wayne? That's exactly what I'm saying. Which one is the mask? That's the good question. Which one is the mask? Which one is really him? All I can say is that we don't know. You know what I mean? We think we do, but what we see is the mask. It says balloons fell from a yacht into a bay. It led to an arrest and $25,000 in fines. Y'all need to stop freaking releasing these damn balloons, these damn gender reveals, all this dumbass shit. One of the damn wildfires started off a damn gender reveal. Y'all stop doing that stupid shit. It's dumb. You want to have a party? Have a party. Just have a party. Don't need all that shit. My daughter's birthday, she was like, "Where's the balloons?" I made some excuse, but I'm stopped buying balloons. Like, they're so useless and pointless. Another thing is the plants, the flowers. People cut flowers. Talking to somebody about that recently. And I'm like, I don't like cut flowers. Like, the idea of giving people flowers, okay, yeah, sweet. But I really like plants. I love them. And I don't like to see them slowly die. Like, you're not going to keep these flowers alive. People are like, oh, I'm going to keep them alive. No, you're not. They're going to die. They're slowly dying already. It's a wrap. As soon as they got cut and put in the little shop for you to buy it, they was slowly dying. And that's what I see when I see some flowers in a vase. I see death. So if I want to give somebody some flowers, I want to give it in a pot or whatever, a living plant that they can keep alive and they can care for. Y'all call me crazy. Call me crazy. What did they say about COVID deaths? Complacency has a price. AMA warns reinfection rates to rise as South African COVID deaths surpass 400. South Africa. Pre-delivery test flight. The Chinese rival to the Boeing 737 MAX and Airbus SE A320neo narrow-body aircraft completed its first pre-delivery test flight. So narrow-body, what does that mean? The Boeings are big, and news networks are not even getting clicks like that. So this shows like there's an opportunity for this, what we're doing here on this show,